She took off her shoes and intended to jump, so he threw himself to stop her. Kyo, 28 years old, broke and without a girlfriend, prevented her. Luck smiled upon him after Eiko included him in the company she worked for. Despite adapting to the new situation and improving the team's environment, they were all laid off by the company after a while. Kyo returned to his family home and found his acceptance letter for the art university, which he had ignored, choosing the business college instead. Kyo was regretful and wished to fix his mistake, when sleep overcame him. He woke up to find an anomaly in his room and realized he had gone back 10 years in the past to the moment he received the university acceptance. He didn't waste the opportunity and arrived at the shared housing to unload his belongings and sleep. He woke up in the morning to find a beautiful girl next to him, realizing the situation belatedly. She woke up to his screaming and nonchalantly drank from his personal bottle. She quenched her thirst and was about to introduce herself, but she slipped off the bed and fell on top of him, making a loud noise that brought the others in the dormitory. They found them in the worst possible position, and Chino explained that she had borrowed his bed for the night and that he was innocent. He took his share of the beating from Kaoji and the other poor soul, Kanji. They are roommates and wear the same university uniform together. Professor Kano entered and welcomed everyone, setting the stage for a harsh reality. Few graduates find jobs each year, and they must bear the responsibility of the risk of choosing this field. As they were leaving, Kyo found a discarded card on the floor, and it turned out the owner was the same Eiko whom he had saved on the bridge. He will see her frequently because their classes have started, and she is serious and does not tolerate any slack from her classmates. It reached the point where she asked the instructor to question the sleeping Kanji about the lecture being explained. Kyo was shocked, as Kanji gave the correct answer to the lecture. Music Kyo carried Kaoji on his back. They separated upon reaching the dorm, but Chino had forgotten her bag with him, and he headed to her room. It wasn't a normal sight for Kyo, as he realized that his favorite poster artist was Chino, who would become famous from the Platinum generation. He chose the dorm to escape problems during meal times, but the bigger problem was Kaoji entering almost unclothed, and poor Kyo was the one who got hit in the university. Kano requested they form groups of 4 for a 3-minute project. Kyo managed to arrange it with his roommates and submit the form. At work, he had a conversation with Kaoji and asked her about her motive for joining the art university. She wanted to step out of her comfort zone and forget the memories of the train station. Kyo returned home, woke up Chino, and asked her the same question. She wants to excel at something after spending a lot of time at the train station. This became the inspiration for an idea that fit the project, filming at the train station, as it's familiar to everyone and the best place to convey the idea of time passing and expiring. Everyone welcomed this idea. Kanji went into his room for a while and came out with a scenario that perfectly matched Kyo's imagination. This strange coincidence made Kanji ask to talk to Kyo, but the only explanation was that it was a mere coincidence. Kyo remembered reading something similar in the future, and it seemed he had stolen Kanji's idea from there. The workflow remained calm until they hit a problem. The scenario's length exceeded the required duration. Kanji asked to condense the script and disagreed with Kyo, who wanted to cut some events. They had to perform exactly as requested for the reward. The conversation took a different turn. Cut what you want, Kyo, but is this your way of making good work? His argument was ridiculous. He left, and Kyo discussed it with the two girls, cutting the discussion short when a student interrupted them on the way, asking to accompany them. They arrived at a club room, which turned out to be luxurious, as they were trying to recruit them. Takashi offered them a trial period and would help them with any filming questions. Kyo went to present the project idea to Kano, who noticed his anxiety and gave him advice. Everyone involved in the project is a creator, and no one has the upper hand over the other. He decided to use his return to change his approach and fix things with Kanji by compromising. The presentation time arrived, and the challenge was clear between Kyo and Eiko, who presented a project before him, also filmed at a train station with a distinctive idea. Kyo realized she had surpassed their own project. Their turn was next, and their film idea was more unconventional and distinctive because it consisted of moving images and not a video, due to a problem that occurred at the shooting location. It turned out Kanji had brought a camera not intended for video recording, putting their project in jeopardy. However, Kyo did not allow this and decided to improvise. He called the club president, Takashi, and asked for advice on how to get the best pictures from the camera they had, in exchange for officially joining the club. He managed their situation with a result that matched the idea, earning warm applause after the audience admired the distinctive presentation, and they secured third place due to the extreme style. Kyo proved his seriousness, and the result was gaining the trust of his colleagues, who then announced their challenge to surpass him. Kano learned that their project had faced a problem to appear in this form and explained to her younger sister, Eiko, that this was why they didn't get first place. Kyo's improvisation indicated that he has a tremendous capacity for problem solving, which is why Kano decided to have her sister work with him in the next semester. He was with Kauji in a karaoke lounge and never expected her voice to be beautiful and suited for singing. However, she lacks confidence, sees herself as an amateur, and wants Kyo to accompany her occasionally to correct her mistakes. As they were leaving, Kyo suggested uploading her singing clips to YouTube after she practices and gains some confidence. As for the viewers, he told them to press the like button, as it was a suitable opportunity. Kauji initially refused the idea, and Kyo tried to convince her to use Japan's YouTube when it was launched. On his way back with Chino, she asked him if he knew she was a painter. Yes, he saw her drawing when the door was open. Chino lacks sufficient self-confidence, she sees her helplessness compared to him and everyone else, despite her love for art. Things aren't going well, and she wants to quit. You can't do that. You can't stop being an artist. He restored her hope, and from today, she would take Kyo as her goal, while his own goal he kept a secret from her until the right time. The second semester began, and the shooting was on the beach. Kyo was happy with the breathtaking views and the charm of the two girls next to him. Behind him, there was a quarrel between Kanji and Eiko, who wanted everything to be perfect. She provoked him by saying he wasn't worth her time arguing with, and as he tried to grab her, he unhooked her bra right in front of Kyo, completing a hat trick for the day. The problem was solved, and she hit Kanji, then asked Kyo what he did to be able to borrow the filming equipment for several days. Kyo had made a deal with third-year students to borrow the equipment when they didn't need it, in return for helping them with any service they wanted. So, Kyo and Eiko agreed to keep it a secret. A girl from behind them from elementary school. No, she was Kiko, a third-year student, and they owed her a favor in exchange for keeping their secret. Their project was screened and admired by the students, but Eiko was not happy with Kauji's acting. She was below the required standard, and the film after theirs confirmed her point, as the acting of its members, a team different from Kyo's, was poor. The screening ended, and the boys' team won because Kano saw their film as complete despite the weak acting. Kauji was not good in her role, just like the film after theirs. She ignored the matter and celebrated with her friends until she was persuaded to sing one song. She was judged by what everyone heard, they hadn't raised their expectations for her, but she completely shattered that ceiling with her unexpected performance and resonant voice. She received praise from her friends, except for Eiko. You weren't serious about wanting to become an actress, so it seems you want to become a singer. Why would you want to act instead of following your passion? Because you're afraid to take it seriously. Why did you join the visual arts program? You should have gone directly to the music program. Your level would surely improve instead of practicing at home or even with Kyo, who doesn't have enough experience to help you. Eiko was not scolding him, but she was upset about the waste of this unique talent. The conversation reached a dead end, and Kauji was about to hit Eiko. The reality seemed harsh for Kauji, but her roommates thought Eiko was right and discussed a solution to help her, but Kauji had to leave for his part-time job. Kyo met with Eiko. She wanted to withdraw from his team, which he certainly refused, and he confirmed to her the validity of her words back then, but he didn't understand why she was angry now. She replied that Kauji has a unique and brilliant talent, but she belittles it, and that's what angered her. Kyo promised her to support Kauji and pull her out of her hole. He headed to the club and was shocked by the necessity of participating in the university festival for 3 days, and they were confused about how they would participate. Takashi wanted to set up a maid cafe, as he was obsessed with photographing the maids' backs. Kyo remembered Kiko, the familiar third-year student, and asked his colleagues about her identity. She suddenly appeared behind him, and it was time to return the favor to her. She wanted to invite him to work with them on their video game, and the reason for choosing him was his excellent skill in the production department. He apologized to her for the time being because he was busy with the festival, but he might consider joining later. She left him a sample of their work and left. He was shocked by their professionalism in game development. He remembered the difficult days at his job, there was a singer with a bad voice, and he had to learn sound engineering to improve her voice. Here, an idea lit up in his head. He modified Kyoji's voice and showed her the modified recording, and she was surprised by the result. He made very minor adjustments, which meant that Kyoji was a small step away from mastering singing, and she needed to trust herself to overcome her fears. She began serious training with his club mate, Moto, who specialized in sound and singing. Kyo succeeded in filming one of the sessions and uploading it to YouTube. He did it behind her back, but she knew he was doing his best to support her. She hugged him, thanking him. The festival began, and he visited the maid cafe, enchanted by their beauty there. Takashi was fulfilling his dream of photographing the maids' backs, and Kyo helped with light cooking and cleaning. One day of their hard work passed, and the festival ended. Kyo noticed Eiko in front of the maid cafe store, intending to apologize to Kyoji. He told her there was no need because she had taken the decision to sing seriously now. Kyo finished his work and went out with Chino on an exploratory tour of the festival until they reached an art exhibition. It was the last stop for Kyo because he collapsed from his accumulated fatigue over the last 2 days. He woke up later and found himself in Chino's arms. "Kyo, you are an adult, and you can do anything. I appreciate your admiration and encouragement for my art." She leaned in to kiss him, but this intimate moment was interrupted by a call to solve a problem that arose in the singing club because the band hadn't arrived. Kyo's idea was brilliant: replace them with Kyoji, and have her sing. She was the only one capable of doing so. Moto agreed with Kyo because he was confident in his recent training with Kyoji, and she would be able to handle it and impress everyone with her voice. All this talk was a selfish desire without asking her permission, as she was afraid to sing in front of people suddenly and instead of a professional singer. Kyo wouldn't let her run away from her golden opportunity to shine. When opportunities arise, they always seem impossible at first, but Kyo knew well the pain of thinking the phrase, "I wish I had done it," and didn't want Kyoji to taste regret. She was still afraid of people's opinions, so Kyo took out his laptop and showed her the thousands of views on the video he had uploaded to YouTube. This meant that people loved her, so why was she afraid of a few hundred she would sing in front of shortly? Thanks to Kyo, she gained more confidence, challenged her fear, and went up on stage. She started singing, and the audience was amazed by this hidden talent in her voice that permeated their minds. She took a step forward by presenting this brilliant performance, and immediately after she finished, she went out to look for Kyo and talk to him, but he was with Chino. She completed her kiss that had been interrupted by the call, and Kyoji was surprised by this sight. Chino did not stop at the festival because she was going to take the next opportunity, but Kyoji caught them in the act. She invited them to eat, and they discussed Kyoji's repeated absence from classes. He promised to attend the following week, but when it arrived, Kyoji did not show up for class. Chino caught him outside after seeing him vomiting and asked him to rest a little from work, but he resisted until he fell to the ground and was taken to the hospital, where he was found to be in a state of severe exhaustion. Kyo asked him why he was working, and Kyoji replied after his constant resistance, "There are family problems with my father, who wants me to become a doctor like my brothers, but I refused," which led to the suspension of the necessary funding to pay the university installments. Kyoji held on to his dream of becoming a scriptwriter and decided to challenge his father and work to pay his installments himself. His current jobs would not be enough to pay the fees before the end of this semester, so he couldn't do anything, and he would have to accept reality. Kyo told him about a way he could earn money and solve this problem, which Kyoji thought was just an attempt to comfort him and not true. "We will develop a video game and sell it directly on the market to earn money. Kyoji would handle the script writing, Chino the drawing, and Kyoji the singing." Kyo wouldn't leave them alone, but would help them, as it was their first time. As for him, he had agreed with Kiko to ask to borrow their famous name in game development and put it on their game. Her condition was selling the game in large quantities, and he had to find an attractive story. Since he had returned 10 years in the past, he was aware of the topics that received great public attention, and based on his background, he chose school romance with its complete details. This made the girls tense, and Kyoji was terrified of the topic's sensitivity. Kyo would help him create these adult scenes. He showed the girls something similar, and the image explained Kyoji's state. Kyo started working and brought a background artist, and he bought equipment with Kiko, but they saw a girl in front of the store who looked wealthy. They continued on their way to talk to Kano, and Kyo asked her to understand the current situation of time constraint, so they might fall short in their university classes. He returned home and was hit by the problems of beginners. Exhaustion quickly overcame them because the game's submission date was relatively close. Eiko noticed their situation and asked Kyo for an explanation of what was happening. She learned about the current project and suggested helping them. Kyo accepted and gave her side tasks. He returned to complete the script writing, and Kanji asked to see his text, but Kyo told him from the first glance that the style needed adjustment. He left him alone in the room, and Kanji decided to delete the entire script and rewrite it from scratch. They gathered around the table, and a strange topic came up about a girl following them around who seemed wealthy. Kanji panicked after hearing this story and decided to leave for the day, but when he opened the door, the same girl appeared and threw herself to hug Kanji. It ended quickly, and she introduced herself as Seo, Kanji's fiancée, because they had promised to marry each other when they were young. She brought expensive food with her, and they sat at the table. She started feeding Kanji, which made Chino jealous, and she offered to feed Kyo, and Kanji wouldn't leave her alone. They returned to work, and Kanji succeeded this time in writing the perfect scenario. Kyo checked Kanji's progress. She had also completed the musical arrangement. She rushed to hug him out of joy, but in a somewhat intimate way, claiming she was charging her energy from him. He continued his tour toward Chino and found her struggling with a problem drawing a scene that required masculine details. She took advantage of his presence in the room and asked him to sit to examine his body in a perverse way under threat. He later met with Eiko and took the task she had completed, and she was surprised that things were going smoothly without any obstacles. She asked him about the tricks he used on his colleagues. He asked them to create something commercial, despite the simplicity of this request, which is theoretically impossible, as each of them has a unique style, and it's difficult to change it, especially Kanji, which confirmed that he trusted Kyo blindly. He returned to complete his work at home and entered Kanji's room, surprised to find Seo inside with completely inappropriate clothing. She was trying to distract him from work and rest a little. Seo's presence in their home became a problem, and they had to get rid of her somehow, or perhaps he should send these two girls away. He went to work and kept thinking that romance might affect their work. Kanji came from behind and helped him stack things, but she was deliberately clinging to him and told him so. Romance was outside his specialization, and he asked Eiko for help to find a way out before a disaster occurred. So, which one are you interested in, Kyo? He replied that they were both wonderful girls, but he didn't feel that way towards either of them. Eiko considered him the source of the problem because he hadn't resolved the matter directly, but had overstepped by acting in a non-committal way that led him to this moment. He left her to return to complete his work with Kanji. There, Seo overstepped again and hugged Kanji, asking him to return to his home, which he refused, and she left. He was about to return to his work, but Kyo told him to rest for the day. Kanji agreed without hesitation because he saw Kyo as a role model. A week passed since Seo left, and she stopped Kyo on the way, asking to talk to him. She would be leaving for her home soon, but she wanted to ask him why Kanji was so attached to him. All he talks about is you. Is it possible that you two have a physical relationship? But this was far from the truth, and Kyo rejected this judgment immediately. It was wrong. He was supporting Kanji on the path he saw for himself, and he was aware of the dangers and obstacles of this path. Kyo would help sell the game for which Kanji wrote the script. 1 month remained until the submission date, and the schedule was still crowded, so Kyo decided to make a big summary to finish on time. He started by convincing Kanji to modify the music arrangement and convinced Chino to change the drawing schedule and method. Kanji was all that was left, and he immediately refused the major scenario changes. This did not resemble the plot he wrote at all. If you do that and change the scenario, what's the point of me being a writer? If you invented the story and the details of the ending, where is my role in all this? Kyo justified the situation by explaining that game development always faces problems, and only a few authors have the freedom to do everything themselves from the beginning. Currently, we must finish to sell the game at the event, and that must be the top priority. Kanji decided to trust Kyo's judgment and make the adjustments according to his instructions. The project was progressing steadily until Chino asked Kyo to check her innovation in drawing. She wanted to modify the timeline and add scenes full of vitality and details, but Kyo was not happy, as this would delay the submission date. He made his decision and apologized to her for not changing it and continuing with the emergency plan. Time was almost up, and they had to submit it tomorrow morning, in a few hours, and technical problems were still appearing, and dialogues were disappearing. Kyo rushed to ask Eiko and Kiko for help, and controlling things was the toughest 8 hours in this entire journey. They succeeded in submitting the game on time. Kyo and Kiko headed to the place where the game was sold. He would now face the moment of truth, failure or success in selling the game. The project ended with brilliant success and sold above expectations, and everyone received their share in return for their efforts. But money is not everything, as humans are emotional beings who do not only seek material things, and this applied to Chino. Should things really end like this? As for Kanji, he asked to speak with him alone and walked outside. Kanji wanted to quit university and retire. Kyo's nerves couldn't handle his words, and he grabbed him, asking for an explanation. I always believed that I was a talented person in script writing or stories and that I could become good like the rest, but making a living by doing so is difficult, and the same applies to our colleagues in the artistic field. Everyone seemed lost until I met you, Kyo. I thought you were a kind person, but I never expected you to hide abilities I didn't know existed. Whenever a problem occurred, you led the way to solving it, and it was normal for you. You are like an obstacle I cannot overcome. All I think about is that it's impossible to reach the level this person thinks it. How many times do I have to relive my life to reach your level? You weren't a writer, and I saw an opportunity for us to complement each other in the field, but I broke down because of the work, and you were forced to solve the problem, and you succeeded. But you said all this was thanks to us and that we deserved the praise. This wasn't the truth, because you were the main reason for the success, and this made me feel lost and like I didn't belong among you. Kyo told him he was wrong, as he wouldn't have been able to do anything without him either. Kanji replied that he would find a solution somehow because he had proved himself by performing miracles earlier. I thought of a pseudonym after becoming a writer, consisting of the name of my hometown and your name too. Kyo remembered that this name was one of the members of the Platinum Generation. This was their last conversation, and Kyo's scream almost tore his throat from the pain. What have I just done? I thought by going back 10 years, I would fix you, but instead, I destroyed the lives of others. He had gone too far in helping them to the point of dependence. He realized belatedly that their own problem-solving was what shaped them, as he hadn't been with them in the future. Kiko appeared before him, and he asked her for help, but something strange happened. He woke up in another place and time. He had returned to the future and married Chino and had a child. He did a little research and was now working in a company with Eiko. He called her to ask some questions, but as soon as she answered, she asked him for help and would send her deputy, Miki, to explain the problem. He went to the house of the artist, Minori, who was responsible for drawing the game character they were working on. She was late for the submission date without a justification. Kyo asked her to explain what she was going through. She no longer had the passion to continue in the field of drawing. Kyo noticed an unfinished drawing open on her device, yet he praised it and told her it was full of life because it was different from her current style. This was exactly what Minori wanted to hear. She had used this distinctive style that belonged to an artist she knew in high school. She now felt motivated and set a date to submit her work. He returned home happy until he learned, to his shock, that Chino no longer draws and had retired. All that happened was that she no longer had anything she wanted to draw. Despite finding a solution with the artist Minori, the manager was not satisfied with this schedule and asked him to hurry up. It wasn't his team's problem to begin with, but Eiko's team's problem, and she apologized for involving him. He invited her to lunch and remembered there that Eiko used to work in the biggest company in Japan, unlike the one she was in now. These changes must have been due to his joining the art university 10 years ago. He became curious about the fate of his colleagues and searched for Kauji on YouTube, which was an even greater disappointment because she had retired a long time ago. He searched for the novels Kanji should have written but found no trace. What he ended up doing was stealing their dreams and creating a world where he was the only happy person. As soon as he returned home, he threw himself into his wife's arms, crying and apologizing. Chino thought her husband had gone crazy. She opened up about the past to explain the feelings that led to her retirement. She wasn't sure if what she was doing was really art. Kyo remembered he was one of the reasons when he was in a hurry to finish the game and didn't give her the personal space for creativity. She confirmed that he wasn't the reason and he had to accept it. She felt sorry for what she was drawing when she was alone, and she retired. A month passed since Kyo's return to the future, and he had adapted to things, but his colleagues were living the worst days of their lives. They had to launch a huge game, and the schedule didn't help. The artist Minori didn't keep her promise, and Miki asked him to go and find out what was going on. She was still lacking motivation and hadn't found what she truly wanted to draw. Kyo suggested bringing her the works of the artist she loved, which might restore her motivation, but Minori wanted some rest and would complete it later. But this meant a bigger problem for Eiko because her team was responsible for developing the game. Kyo asked her to find out the real problem in the project, and she replied that it was the game engine. They had built it from scratch on a proprietary company engine, but it wasn't sufficiently ready yet and would cause problems. Despite this, the company didn't want to use an external engine because it was expensive. Eiko no longer had the courage to face the manager and suggest using an external engine. He took action and requested this instead of her, but the manager was still stubborn, as this was a big change that would cause a breach of trust with investors. The manager thought Eiko was responsible for the development team and that Kyo should focus on his work because he trusted him. Kyo rethought his decision to help, which had broken up the Platinum generation and deprived them of their dreams, and surrendered himself to reality. The game was launched on time and was a disaster, causing widespread anger in the gaming community, and worse, the company had underestimated them. The sound of the argument was audible outside between the manager and Eiko. He wanted her to make additional temporary fixes to restore the game's stability, but she disagreed because the fundamental problem was the game engine, and he refused the idea of changing it. Kyo moved to offer help but remembered what he had done with Kanji, so he would watch from afar without interfering. He returned to his office and opened his computer, surprised by a notification from Kanji's channel. "So why don't you hit the bell too and be surprised like me when I post?" She had returned after remembering her university days and her colleague who encouraged her to enter the field of singing. She had no excuses left and decided to rely on herself and move forward. Watching the clip gave him a huge morale boost and eased the burden of guilt on his shoulders. He stood up and hit the wall to stop the argument because he had a solution. He grabbed the file and told him they had to change the engine immediately, which the manager refused as a figment of imagination. Rebuilding the game from scratch. But the good news was that Eiko had found an engine that worked instantly. The manager was not convinced because it would cost them a fortune, so Kyo also handed him a file with the financial transactions and licenses. He hadn't exceeded the company's specified budget. With that, Kyo solved the problems and distributed the roles to everyone, and even got the manager's approval on the condition of bringing the artist Minori back to work. He went to her to give her the drafts of the drawings for his university game, as he concluded that the artist Minori loved was his wife Chino, and these drawings belonged to her. Her problem was solved, and her motivation returned. She submitted the drawings a very short time later, and everyone was happy. He learned that Eiko wanted to travel and predicted that she wanted to leave the company. He followed her to the airport but didn't find her. She came to him personally and introduced herself, asking him why he was so worried about her being there. "Why are you so worried about me?" He replied that he felt scared. "Everyone left me, so I thought you would do the same thing too. I was the reason for my friend's retirement." She didn't like this and stood up and started hitting him with her personal bag. "You were always a top student and such an honest person that you made me feel jealous. Kyo, why did you never ask for help? Why do you always try to take care of things yourself? I know you haven't accepted the idea of your friends retiring, but how can that cause their future to be ruined? Who said that was your responsibility? It's not worth your sadness and depression, or even saying, 'I am useless.' You always put your own matters aside and tried to help others and push them to create something. Have some confidence. You shouldn't be here. That's impossible to be true. You are amazing. Out of everyone I've met, you are the most generous, enthusiastic, and hardest to predict. That's why I loved you and took you as my role model. If time goes back for us, Kyo, ask for my help, and I will surely answer you." Despite this lecture, it seemed she confessed her love to him belatedly. Their conversation ended, and another one began with Kiko, who suddenly appeared outside. It seemed she would send him back to the past. Kyo would return to be with everyone again, but before leaving, he asked her for a little time to bid farewell to his family. He reunited with them, and the strange thing was that Chino had regained her passion and motivation for drawing again. He spent his last night with them and met Kiko, who returned him to the past. This time, he would act in a way he might regret. Kauji asked him to accompany her on her next work, but he created distance between them and only encouraged her, not interfering in her personal life. As for Chino, he helped her indirectly by placing drawings and motivators to overcome the matter and recover from her creativity problem, which he happened upon on his way to help Kanji.